Шановні журналісти, вітання.
Good afternoon. Now we are going to speak about the self-control of the budgetary funds allocated for free legal aid and where the money in reality go. Please welcome Valentyn, who was the deputy head of the Ukrainian National Bar Association, and Hanna, Kolesnyk, head of the UNBA Human Rights Committee. Please welcome. The floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm Valentyn Gvozdiy. I'm deputy head of the Council of the Ukrainian National Bar Association, and please meet my colleague Hanna Kolesnyk. She's the head of the Human Rights Committee in the association. Our press briefing of today will be dedicated to certain information we'd like to share with you as regards inefficient use of the funds available to the Free Legal Aid Coordination Center with the Ministry of Justice in Ukraine. If you remember, last week I had an announcement about this breaking information, and probably the figures you are going to hear today will be not the most exact ones, because we don't have access to some specific documents. The information on Coordination Center's website is placed in a way as to really complicate any processing of this information, but nevertheless I think we will be able to get the general overview of the situation. We are going to monitor these expenditures further on, because at this point in time our state is not capable of supporting that much of bureaucrats and material framework, ever-growing material support framework on that. The topic of today will be a continuation of our previous appearances and previous talks about the existing free legal aid system being fully controlled by the state in the least efficient way, to the extent of it becoming a threat to human rights and freedoms in Ukraine, as well as to independent legal advice, bringing more sufferings to individuals here. My colleague will give you some examples of that. Before 2012, when there was no free legal aid system in place, the Bar Association was the only one dealing with this matter, and it was receiving funds via the Ministry of Justice, but in effect not a penny was received for this type of aid. The numbers you're now seeing on the slide include public procurement efforts, and they do not include fees of legal counselors. It is about buying office furniture, office equipment, rental of premises, the improvements, wages, and payroll to coordination center officials, etc. You can see these numbers growing year by year. If it was about 15 and something million in 2012, this year the incomplete data suggest it is about 57 million, as the Coordination Center website reports. Speaking percentage-wise, you might be interested to hear that in 2013 only 57% of the annual budget for free legal aid was effectively used to pay for fees to legal counselors, the remaining amount being spent on the support and upkeep of the centers. In 2014, about 45% were used for maintenance and administration, and in this year we see the tendency continues. Now we see a steady growth in the number of personnel of such coordination centers. It's about a clear geometric progression going on. 3 to 15 employees in each regional branch. And you can check on this slide how the personnel numbers really grow. starting with 125 persons in total to the most recent information announced on television, to the effect that the number will be increased to at least 3.5 thousand officials to be employed to better coordinate the process. You can only imagine the amount of costs and expenditures that will be involved on a regular basis. Again, if the initial number for 2013 were 14.7 million, then the most recent data say it is about 18 million, and this is just about the payroll to the personnel. And these are not barristers, they are not legal counselors in the majority, they are people also without higher legal education, and in view of barristers this is unacceptable. On the backdrop of growing figures of the army of bureaucrats, we can see how earnings of barristers are dwindling. If we take Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa region numbers, you will see that about 4 million were paid in fees in 2013, and it was less than about 3 million 1 year later, which is to say that we see reduction in fees against growing administrative costs. And this is a clear imbalance that may not be maintained. Some of the costs may be justified, but again, provided huge demand for such services would exist, which is not the case, by the way. We are deeply concerned with the inefficient use of budgetary funds. And this is not about some imaginary funds, it is some specific cash paid from the pockets of taxpayers for this purpose. Interestingly, a tender was called last month and it was concluded for the total amount of almost 25 million hryvnias to repair premises of the main coordination center with the Ministry of Justice and Artema Street here. I'm not sure this is a proper amount in the current conditions of almost catastrophic situation in the state. 32 million have been earmarked to purchase a variety of office equipment. And this is done in situation when the centers themselves do not provide free legal aid, because this is the thing which barristers do. Nevertheless, they buy state-of-the-art cell phones, phone rotary service stations, etc. They're buying top-of-the-cream equipment for state officials, for bureaucrats, not for barristers engaged in free legal aid delivery. Again, you can see this already successfully closed tender for 1 million euro for renovation of premises on Artema 73 here in Kiev, just for the sake of having them more comfort there. If you ask me, would I agree to this? I would definitely say I'm not going to agree with it, and it's up to you to decide whether you will. Again, judging by the results of the survey by GfK Ukraine, more than 50% of people in Ukraine are short on funds to buy most necessary things. 61% of people thinking of possibly leaving the country for elsewhere. The numbers are alarming. Yes, we all want reforms, we want a new country to be built here, but I'm not sure that with inefficient spending of public funds it may be achieved. Again, the minimum wage for today is 1,378 hryvnias a month, and a bit more than 1,000 hryvnias as retirement benefit. Just imagine how many people would have got better salaries or minimum wages without those 1 million euro worth repairs. And again, if we check for architectural design documents to be prepared for this renovation project, the amount will grow even further. Unfortunately, we at the civic control cannot do anything more than just monitoring and notifying our results. And people from these centers, the officials, they demand documents on free legal aid delivered from barristers, going against the law on that, because these documents should be kept secret. Yet pretending to be coordinating the work, the guys from the centers want this information. They have also introduced an extra complicated settlement standard forms, making barristers fill in a huge number of documents, reports and statements, and there are strong bureaucratic procedures behind these, which further complicate the work of barristers. But the worst thing is opacity, a total opacity of how cases and dockets are being distributed among the barristers. At times, this opacity shows abysmal numbers indeed. Again, this is based on the information taken from the website of the coordinating center. You will be shocked to know that, say, in Dnipropetrovsk region, one barrister has one docket to review, while another has 170 of them. That's a huge 170 times big imbalance. Or take another barrister, her name is Gvozdiy. She was assigned 450 cases, that is 450 clients. Can you imagine the amount of time and effort needed? And a barrister may not spend more than 5 hours daily to work this, and if you check for the numbers, you can imagine the number of years you will need to spend to deal with them. Surely it doesn't provide any quality legal aid. Same imbalance you can find in Odessa region. One docket for one barrister and 157 for another one. This is a huge imbalance. I'm not sure that other barristers simply refuse from delivering such aid. I do know from my colleague barristers that they often complain about being delivered or assigned empty cases, other interesting cases being sent to someone else. At times they're getting empty cases that will bring no fee for them, no fame for them, and the mean fee rate for a barrister today is about $1.20 an hour. This is ridiculous, particularly combined with the huge renovation figures. I would really like you, the media representatives and the white public, to hear us. We do want public funds being spent in an efficient way. We do want a drastic change to the legal aid and free legal aid in this country, because the current form of legal aid is really a threat to human rights and freedoms, because on one side the state kind of provides free legal aid facilities for people, but on the other hand, through this coordinating center, the government retains its iron grip over the outcomes of such aid, and this, in my view, contains clear legal risks. And probably a barrister having 471 cases to review will be more than willing to hear the desires and intentions of Coordination Center Director. And we want to stress that the current free legal aid system is far from democratic here. It is not built on human rights and freedoms. It is built on the interest of the state. It has been conceived by the previous governments, and they do their best to mask their operations under the guise of Ministry of Justice activities. There were similar situations in other post-Soviet countries like Armenia, Georgia. During my recent visit to the Council of Europe, I heard of one of the most important projects on legal system reform in the EU, and this includes urgent check of the situation in partner and neighboring states, also in the Eastern Europe, and the development of recommendations for these countries to improve their legal assistance systems to exclude any influence on barristers. As I already mentioned, Armenia and Georgia managed to change their laws about a year and a half ago. They had similar abysmal situation in Georgia, but the state was finally able to change the law. The current free legal aid system is exclusively within the auspice of the civic control measures. They have a separate board representing representatives of various CSOs and bar associations, with just one representative of the state, and they are out of control of the Ministry of Justice. And by the way, before that, they had a very bad situation with the free legal aid system being under the aegis of the correctional facility managing board. Now everything has changed in the country to the effect that even the Ministry of Finances provides for transparent control measures to see how they operate, whether they are effective, and I can assure you that they no longer launch costly renovations. This is the question that needs to be solved immediately, also in terms of identifying the range of persons entitled to get this free legal aid from the state, because at this moment in time, everyone able to state that he is not in a position to hire a barrister can ask for such type of aid. We need to understand and declare it openly that the state has no possibility to spend as much funds as it is spending now. We should work like they do it in the United States. If you want free legal assistance, okay, you can have one assigned by the state, but then you have to sign a statement of income to show that you have no bank deposits, luxury cars, mansions, etc. There is no means to allow a barrister, and then you will be getting this free legal aid. If you are poor, okay, if you are capable of allowing that, then please pay. And in this country, at this moment, it is just enough to sign a paper requesting such free legal assistance. And we've been now receiving complaints from courts when other barristers are being effectively barred from delivering their services until the situation with the forcefully assigned free legal counsel is resolved. That is to say that we need to provide for changes in the law on free legal aid in Ukraine to identify the range of individuals entitled to such assistance. And we need to get it out of the sphere of influence of the Ministry of Justice. And this will provide for a free and democratic system of legal advice and support. Now the floor is going to my colleague Hanna, please. Good afternoon. Hanna Kolesnyk, head of the Human Rights Committee established with the National Bar Association of Ukraine. I want to speak today about the inefficiency of the state-owned, state-run machine of free legal aid. Heads of such coordination centers at localities know about it all too well, but the situation has remained unchanged for a number of years. Many times we see people facing criminal charges and being unable to get free legal assistance. We have plenty of stories to tell about complaints from people already sitting behind bars because of the lack of such aid. Take someone Oleg from a Poltava Correctional Facility number 64. He's been requesting this free legal assistance for more than a month. He's serving his term and he's clearly unable to address the center himself. But the replies he gets to his letters are empty and blank responses. And the answers clearly say that the center, the coordination center at this respective region, has no idea that the person is already behind bars. That is to say that this person is effectively left out in the cold. At the time of Maidan, this person was arrested on criminal charge suspicion, and when he was sent to this correctional facility, he was requested kickback from correctional officers not to have his staying conditions worsened. Some of the prisoners were transferred forcefully to a correctional facility in Kharkiv, and they were beaten there, maltreated there, to the extent that this Oleg started developing problems with his health status. When he was returned to Poltava facility, he was opened another criminal investigation according to Article 361 of the Criminal Code. He was about to serve his term and to leave to receive this new accusation, and when he addressed for free legal assistance, he got no response, no meaningful response from these centers. He had to address our association, and now he is in Kremenchuk correctional facilities, and our barristers do their best to help him. It will be done until he is assigned, truly assigned, and we do our best to help him. There are many cases like this. There are cases when legal counsels being nominated, but they are no shows, and prisoners have no idea where the counsels are. They try to affect somehow the situation by calling to different institutions, and they get the response that there is no way to influence a counsel who is not willing to take the case. The problem is, in our view, that the one and only ministry, the Ministry of Justice, is overseeing the work of both legal counsels and the penitentiary and correctional facilities. This is a deadlock in it. We see problems in distribution of dockets. There is legal counsels that are not faithful slaves of the state are given empty dockets that bring them neither money nor fame. Those who faithfully serve the state, they get better cases. Legal counsels going against the system even risk having their contract and licenses terminated. And I am, as a legal counsel, I have to protect my client, not work in the interests of the state. And the state, on the contrary, thinks that whenever it compensates for this free legal aid, then it is entitled to get any information about my client and do any other things. Please understand that, God forbids, there can be time when anyone from you can become the victim of this faulty judiciary system. And imagine a situation when there will be a legal counsel working from the state and for the state, who will be siphoning all your confidential information to the state in spite of the constitutionally provided principle of free choice of legal counsel for the accused. And this brings huge distrust among the people. At times we see legal counsels who were prosecutors or other state officials before, and they clearly work to the detriment of the whole case. Coming back to this legal counsel who had 471 cases assigned to her, there are 256 working days in a year for a legal counsel. Imagine the number of time she will need. It is necessary to go to see her client, to go to a correctional facility, to work with witnesses, to collect evidence, etc. And whether and if the number is a bit less, to 261 cases or 170 cases, it doesn't make the work of legal counsels any more easier. And this is a clear indication that these coordination centers cannot effectively manage the barrister community. Nevertheless, they maintain that they are in charge, they monitor, oversee and control the system. It's a horrible machinery in place, and this goes against the people's trust in legal advice. Thank you. Now we have time for just a couple of questions, if any. Єгор Желтухін, Юридична газета. You've been criticizing the work of legal counsels and conditions of free legal counsel, but what about the National Bar Association? Maybe it is for association. You mentioned about quasi-advocates working, so what does association do to weed out these bad sheep, black sheep? Maybe my colleague was not entirely clear about that, but we are not criticizing the legal counsels themselves. We criticize the system that puts pressure on them, and we try to provide you with the facts and figures to show that because of the pressure from the system, legal counsels need to go to great lengths in their work at terms of to consciously committing some violations, and we surely do not support them in these things, but we understand that this is the result of the workings of the system. Last week I responded to a media question about what a national of Ukraine, a citizen of Ukraine may do whenever he has become a victim of faulty and poor work of a legal counsel. I explained that when this has been committed by a legal counsel who's been delivered as a free legal aid, please let this information known to the National Bar Association of Ukraine. We will process these requests. We will pay attention to this. Whenever we will see a violation of professional ethics, we will take necessary measures, even disciplinary measures. Little do people know about their possibilities of filing a complaint against the legal counsel found in breach of certain professional criteria, but there are disciplinary measures in place, and we strongly stand for high quality work of every legal counsel who is the member of our association. We are a professional association, and we do try and make our best to see that only top-notch professionals with proper regard of the ethics code work with us, and we will be really ruthless on any perpetrator. Could you give us a rough ratio between the scope of services of the scope of services provided by a coordination center? I mean, those that were received by people as good ones and those that left people unhappy. I think the information should be better sought at the coordination center. Maybe they even have ordered a multi-million survey on that. We at the association, with our this year budget of a bit more than 4 million hryvnias, have no such funds to carry out surveys like that. Nevertheless, we provide training possibilities for our members. We do publications, we have our regional professional meetings. And this is not that we are complaining about that. We are trying to save our money and we are not going into renovation spree. What in review should be an optimum financial ratio between the bar association and the general prosecutor's office, given that the numbers for GPO are considerably tens of times greater than those for the barrister system? I've never looked into details of that. I cannot give you any numbers, but the amounts we introduced you here show that at least 50 million hryvnias can be saved by the state. 50 million hryvnias a year in administration costs if this centralized administration is devolved to the regional level. And this is for real. If the state takes this way, it will surely bring huge savings. You try to compare the situation with us versus the GPO, but the problem is that the GPO system, they do support and pay for the work of prosecutors, really, whilst the network of coordination centers, they do not deliver free legal aid immediately. This is just a bunch of officials, of bureaucrats, trying to oversee barristers, legal counsels. They are answering phones from the phone calls from the Ministry of Justice. There are people like legal advisors there, but legal counsels themselves, they work in the field and they are not employed at such centers, because legal counsels are independent entities that are not paid from this and by these coordination centers. And these people are registered in a single register of legal counsels of Ukraine. And they only have to report to this coordination center with €1 million worth renovation. You probably mistook the issue with the idea, recently introduced the idea that legal counsels have to sit in shifts at centers in waiting for clients, but this is just one chair and one table, and the guys will normally take their laptops from home with them, waiting for clients to address. The Ukrainian Foundation of Legal Assistance, we are and Joe, given a huge public interest in the topic announced today, we as a charity institution, charity organization dealing with the protection of legal protection of rights and freedoms, we prepared an information that we managed to deliver to all centers of secondary legal assistance, to councils of bar councils in the regions, and we've started getting feedbacks. We actually, in delivering our information, we wanted to know about their financial details, and we've started getting feedbacks with figures And we'd like to take this occasion to ask you, Mr. Gvozdiy, whether we are going to get such information, feedbacks from all organizations of legal bodies, legal councils. Well, I may not give you the time because we have a coordinated system which is nevertheless not in a pyramid-like fashion, and we do not oversee everyone because organizations tend to be separate and they work independently, but you can go to our website to see open source information about our funds, about our spendings. Another question. The coordination center has an open information about the number of the employees, 126 centers, and it is said there about more than 1,100 of employees. And you mentioned about 3.5 thousand. Why is that difference? The number has been taken by us from a budget program published on the website of the center for the coming year. And this is the intention to increase the staff. Thank you for delivering this updated information about the real number. I'm still glad to hear the number of officials at these centers is steadily growing. You've all heard seen social advertising. You've heard about more than 2,000 officials in the Ministry of Justice, which is to say that we roughly have one central official for every 2 legal counsels. A legal counsel works unilaterally, protecting his clients before the strong state machine. Question is, what officials do? Thank you. Our